across those once rigid borders. And now more than ever before, technology has made the goal of African unity a virtual reality. It's easy to take this newfound mobility on the continent for granted and forget that it always hasn't been this way. Not so long ago, as recently as the late 1960s and early 1970s, and I dare say even into the 80s and 90s, unless it was on foot or with an automobile, you couldn't travel from one African country to another, even if they were neighboring, without first going through Europe. Even postal mail and telephone calls were routed through at least one European country, sometimes two. It is true that our physical borders, those colonial constructs, are no longer as monumental or divisive, but they are not the only borders in existence. There are new borders being drawn every day by religious intolerance, by economic disparity, by gender discrimination, by xenophobia and ethnic conflicts, and by terrorism, hatred, and fear. The challenge to moving forward is finding new ways to not only cross those borders, but to also erase them completely. The late Chinua Achebe, our literary father, was fond of recounting an old proverb that says, and I quote, "The reason the hunter is always victorious is that the lion does not have a storyteller." Quotations closed. We must insist on being the experts of our own experiences, on telling our own story of the Africa we know, as Noah Deshe did in his film White Shadow about the plight of albinos in Tanzania, and Young Kim did in his film City of Dust about the life of slums in Uganda. In 1969, when FESPACO, the Biennial Film and Television Festival in Ouagadougou, was launched, only 23 films were shown. Filmmaking in Africa was still in its fledgling state. Now the film industry in Nigeria alone, Nollywood, as it has been nicknamed, is the third most lucrative film industry in the world, behind cinema in India and the United States. The world is literally at our fingertips. In 140 typographic characters, we can share even the most mundane news of our lives with complete strangers in faraway places. With a single hashtag, we can appeal to the humanity of our brothers and sisters across the globe and ask for help with a deadly epidemic or with the return of kidnapped schoolgirls. We must continue to take to Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. We must continue to post, share, pin, and blog about all our victories, whether large or small, personal or political. When we celebrate yet another free and fair election, we celebrate our future. When we recognize people like Patrick Ngowi, who is revolutionizing the solar industry, Dele Olejede, the first African-born Pulitzer Prize winner, and Farida Bedwe, a brilliant software engineer with cerebral palsy, who is a shining example of the many abilities of the so-called disabled, we recognize our own limitless potential. Each story affirms that the true wealth of our resource-rich continent lies not in the gold, silver, diamonds, bauxite, copper, or even oil, but rather in our people. That is why dialogues and exchanges such as the ones that will take place during this conference are so important. They give us an opportunity to share the accomplishments and experiences, and yes, the frustrations. They allow us to understand that we are part of a movement, a unique moment in time. But most of all, they remind us that if we want to give this moment its due, if we want to keep it from being omitted from the pages of somebody else's history book, then we must be the magicians. We must be the storytellers and the historians who claim it for posterity and in the name of our motherland, Africa. And this is why I accepted to give this keynote today to help tell our own story, the story of Africa. I wish to close with a few lines from the poem Random Notes to My Son by South African poet laureate Kyora Petse Kozitsile, or Bra Willie as he is affectionately called. And I quote, "I have fallen with all the names I am, but the newborn I, old as childbirth, must touch the day that speaking my language will say, today we move, we move." I thank you for your kind attention, and I wish you a pleasant and productive conference. Thank you.